So, this is Overlord Bo, back with another information video, and today we'll be going over the top coal ships of 2024. So, let's get started. And today, SAT score will be helping me as well. So, to start off, let's talk about the black. So, you think the black is worth it in 2024?
If you're playing a lot of ranked, yes, but she's very expensive for what she does.
Yeah, for me, I find that the black is a very good choice, but is not your first coal ship choice. It's further down the line just due to that ridiculously high 296,000 coal price tag. So, definitely not your first choice, but it's definitely a must-have down the line for sure. And what about the NEUSTRASHIMY? I honestly don't think it's worth it. Mostly due to how expensive it is. Like down the line, sure, but not as a first have. It's definitely it's just too much. And the black is overall a better DD than compared to the NEUSTRASHIMY.
I do like NEUSTRASHIMY, and she tends to be underrated as a destroyer, but as you said, she's too expensive for what she brings to the table. So unless you're playing like tier 9 ranked, or there is a tier 9 season where you may play a destroyer, then I would not consider getting NEUSTRASHIMY.
All right, so moving on to the infamous Malta. Even though I hate to say this, the Malta is legit one of the top coal ship choices if you do play CVs. It
I
is.
would disagree at this point. Her AP dive bombers got nerfed the
Oh,
hell
they
out of it.
did.
Yeah,
Oh, I
like
didn't know
Apache though.
that. Oh, damn, I didn't know that. So then, what if the Malta isn't as highly recommended? Then what do you recommend for the coal ship then?
Immelmann.
The M.IMMELMANN, really?
Yeah, if you're going to get a carrier, don't. It's recommended to get the Immelmann now.
Wow, I did not know that. I actually love the Emmeline, but I always thought, like, ever since the at Malta came out, Malta was the favorite, so I'm guessing the Emmeline's the favorite now.
Yeah, Immelmann didn't change. Malta got her AP bombs heavily nerfed. They can still hit hard, but they're not as consistent as before. And I think yeah, that's just the main thing. She's still relatively easy to play, but I think most players would prefer the Immelmann as she outputs considerable damage with her skip bombers and torps.
Yep. All right, so moving on from the two CVs, what about the KURFURST?
I mean, she plays just like the Prussian. She's the easiest ship to play, but she also has the reputation to be a mediocre ship at best. Unless you play a lot of brawls, I do not recommend.
Yeah, I like her particularly for tier 10 ranked. I use the legendary mod and just have fun just brawling with her in ranked. But other than that, I in randoms she suffers a lot at this point just due to
Uh huh.
how large of a target she is. So as a first coal ship, probably not. No.
No, but she's still one of the most popular ships because she's German. She's got big HP. She's got big 12 16-inch guns.
Yep.
So, well, just go farm these people who didn't read this video.
Yep. So, what about the Brisbane? Now, the Brisbane was more of a more recent coal ship edition. It has a 12-kilometer radar with 13.5-kilometer torps. Uh, Amazing torpedo boat, but it has the same exact hull as a Minotaur. So, pretty much it's a Minotaur with a 12-kilometer radar, long range torps, and HE. So, it has both HE and AP. Would you consider this to be one of the top coal ships? I know in competitive for COTS, it was heavily used when they limited ships like the Nevesky, where the Nevesky were banned. Brisbane
Mhm.
was used a lot in uh, retaliation because of that.
Yeah, her 12-kilometer radar is amazing. She has HE. And for kiting, she gets the 12-kilometer torps, which are very, very deadly. She's overall a very good to excellent ship, but because of that Minotaur hull, she's not forgiving. You have and her ballistics aren't the best as well, so she can't take full advantage of the 12-kilometer radar by herself.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the torps are 12s and not 13.5s. I think I'm.
Uh,
I think I mixed it up
can you,
with the Janon.
let me double check. It is. I would have to double check to make sure.
I can just go look. It's not too hard. Tier 10. Where is it? Let's see.
Brisbane's
13.5.
13.5. You're
Okay.
correct.
Aha!
Yeah.
I knew it. I knew they were 13.5s. I was about to say because I know the Janon and it have like the same stats. That's why I just did that. All right,
That's fine.
so moving on to the Napoli. I definitely think Napoli is one of the top coal ships at this point. Definitely a must-have both for randoms and competitive.
I
100%.
would recommend more for competitive and ranked. She's still a solid randoms options, but there's a few others I would try first.
But yeah, the tankiness, the smoke, the exhaust smoke, and the plane spotting it has, and along with the sap secondaries, makes this ship a tremendously strong coal ship that's been seen a
Eh,
lot in competitive.
yep. If you want to play an aggressive ship, take Napoli. She is about the closest you can get.
So moving on to the submarine, the U-45. Yeah. Yeah, I hate to say it, but this thing is legit like pretty much the top submarine. This and the Gato are the top submarine at this point. So if you play subs, and the U-45 is a must-have.
If you're unfortunately a submarine main, yeah, 4 or 501 is a no-brainer. She's arguably the most broken of the subs.
Yep, exactly. It's mainly due to how fast it is underwater at 30 meters and 60 meters. It can top out at, it goes like 36 knots or 35 knots. It's insanely quick.
Yep. She's very difficult to kill, and she can just spam torps like no tomorrow. So if anyone even thinks about pushing into you, they die.
Yep. All right. So U-45 is a must-have. What about the Yoshino?
Yoshino, if you want something relatively easy to play, Yoshino's fine. You get 20-kilometer torpedoes, you get solid guns, but as far as impact is concerned, you don't actually do that much. You sit at like 15 to 20 kilometers, you kite, you farm damage, and then you wonder why your team's all dying.
Yep. I find the Yoshino kind of boring to play due to how far back you have to sit. Because if you get anywhere close with this ship, you just get farmed out. There's no ifs or ands about it. It's such a massive cruiser. It has such a massive broadside. You have to sit really far away, or you get heavily farmed really quick.
hmm That's not to say she can't do anything as a ship, but she's not very interesting, and she tends to just sit there as a long range farmer.
Yep. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the Moskva. Moskva used to be a tech tree line ship, was moved over to the coal ships. I'd say it's definitely one of the top competitive ships at the moment, and also is a really fun random ships as well. You can play it as both a bowman or a kiter, but it's a lot harder to play as a kiting ship just due to how massive its broadside is. It has a lot of utility with that 12-kilometer radar and the fact that it has hydro as well. It also has a legendary mod that makes it a lot more accurate. So even and we all know how fast Russian shell ballistics already are for the cruisers. So getting that plus high accuracy means that this thing can deal damage to a lot of destroyers, even at far distances, just because of how fast the shells are and how accurate they are.
hmm She doesn't see quite as much as competitive play, but teams will at least consider her as an option. So if you're thinking about playing competitive, Moskva should be one of the ships you're thinking about.
For sure, for sure. I would definitely say MOSKVA is one of the top coal ships at the moment. Now, moving on from the MOSKVA, let's move on to the KABA.
Ooh. Kaba is a Russian gunboat. She she used to be the tech tree ship until Delny replaced her in the line. She's kind of painful to play. Her rudder is literally broken. She she has respectable gun power, but it's limited by her short range. And you have 6 kilometer torpedoes, so not really that useful.
Yeah, unfortunately. The only way to play the Kaba is you have to use the legendary mod. So if you don't have access to the unique upgrades, you're not even going to be able to really play this ship well because the unique upgrade makes it where it has increased gun range. You can't increase the gun range in modules, you can only increase it in the skills. And this thing already has a terrible gun range. And if you're able to get the unique upgrade with the skill upgrade in the commander skills, it goes up to like 14 something. And this thing has a concealment around 9 kilometers. You just get spotted from space. You have to have the range on this. If you don't, it's super hard to play just due to how big it is. So I don't really recommend the Kaba for like as like a it's not really a must have DD. I'd rather recommend the Kleber instead, which you just get from the French tech trees.
Or one of the upcoming coal ship destroyers we're going to talk about.
Yep, that is true. Now, let's move on to the Salem. What do you think of the Salem? Do you think it's a must have in the coal ship market?
She's an excellent choice. She's literally a side grade of Des Moines. You take you give her a super heal, but you also you give her either you take away her consumable options. So kind
Hmm.
of a more slightly more combat oriented of Des Moines. If you like Des Moines, you'll like Salem. They play they handle very similarly. Their gunnery is the same, and their carry and Salem's carry potential is also very good.
It is. It has a very high carry potential. I personally love to play the Salem more open water, but I know a lot of people will play it very similar to the Moines, which is each their own preference. People can play it however they like. Like Des Moines, I like playing more with the legendary mod, right? And then with the Salem, I'll play the range mod open water. But you can also play Salem more near islands using the reload module in the 6th slot instead. But this ship has a little bit diversity in its builds or play styles, which I really like about the Salem.
It's also a it's also an interesting competitive option. You probably won't see her much until King of the Seas, but until then, she's not a bad option if you're playing the lower leagues.
Yep. Now, moving on to the Hayate. The Hayate was originally a free XP competitor to the Smallland, where the Smallland and the Hayate were both worth 2 million free XP. But over time, as you saw, World of Warships has removed free XP ships from the game and moved them over to coal or other resources. And the Hate, when they did that, over time they also gave it a buff where they gave it a reload buff and they give it a reload booster. So it makes it a really strong coal ship nowadays. But back when it was first introduced, it was very it was just underwhelmed due to the Smallland. Smallland was such a king free XP ship at the time that nobody was compared to the Smallland, the Hayate was garbage then. But nowadays, Hayate is really good.
hmm I agree with that. Solid all-around ship that has reload booster, so she can torpedo and she can torpedo entire pushes. You can't get small and thankfully, but Hayate is a solid all-around destroyer if you are looking for that kind of gameplay at tier 10.
Yep. Now moving on from the Hayate, what about the Trump?
Tromp is a weird ship to say the least. She has decent guns, but her survivability isn't very good if she gets spotted. 5.8 concealment's great, but if you want to use her guns, it's best to stay at long range where it's harder to hit. but her gimmick is the airstrike, which allows her to punish stationary ships and predictable ships. Very good at farming fires on battleships. And she also has some torpedoes on the side. Not a lot, but enough to be a threat. So she's kind of a weird category. She's definitely unique. Can be fun if you like airstriking people, but if you want something more familiar, there's other ships for you.
Hmm. Now, moving on, let's talk about the Alvaro. Now, the Alvaro has the Spanish gimmick of having the burst fire, so it shoots 3 salvos during its burst fire salvo. What would you say this ship is a good coal ship choice at this point, or do you think it's better to more focus on the other coal ships?
I would not recommend her first. She's kind of big, bulky, very easy to hit. Her fire is pretty funny, but she trades that for continuous DPM.
Yep.
If you want a funny button ship for a destroyer, she can be a solid pick. But as an overall ship, I would recommend something else.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the Marceau. The Marceau is pretty much the shotgun cousin to the Kleber, where the Kleber is meant to be more of a long range shooter. The Marceau is more of a close range shooter, having the pretty much the Colbert guns on it. It also has 9 kilometer torpedoes as well. So the Marceau is more of a DD killer type destroyer rather than the Kleber's being more of an open farmer. Like you can build the Marceau to be a farmer, but the fact that it has the Colbert guns means at distance the shells are going to be so slow and such a long air time. So normally Marceau players just are more of a DD hunter. But I recommend the Marceau off of my own personal preference. But what do you think, SAT?
Marceau's a very strong ship. As he said, she trades the clever guns for the Colbert guns. Her DPM is very good. She can farm ships, assuming you can keep her guns on point because the shell ballistics are pretty bad.
Yep.
They force her to fight at closer ranges, which in turn makes you more vulnerable to getting hit. Even a 55 knot destroyer can be hit if you get close enough.
Yep, exactly. Now, moving on from the Marceau, from being one of the top uh, coal ships, what about the Sherman? I find the Sherman overall, with its HE and SAP, and the fact that it has one of the highest shell fires in the game from just how many shells it can put out. It also has hydro and a smoke. I find this to be like a really good farmer DD if you're trying to farm, but the problem is it's such a large DD. And it's really hard to be maneuverable with it as well. And it also has about a 6.5 kilometer concealment. So if you're spotted, you're going to get taking a lot of damage from it as well.
Yeah. She also gets one less smoke, so you have to be careful where you commit it. She kind of relies more on correct smoke placement, because her gunnery and damage output is very good. And she also gets Hydro to defend against torpedoes. She's a lot easier to use than the Marceau, but she does require some thinking ahead to know where to position your smoke.
Yep, exactly. Now, moving on from that, let's talk about the Halford. I personally am not a fan of the Halford. It's like it was the first hybrid for the destroyers. I don't really think this I don't think anyone should really get the ship unless they plan on playing this thing in divs. You do get smoke, torps, guns, and you get the hybrid planes. But the main gimmick of a DD is using your concealment to your advantage. But they can instantly see when the planes are launched. Say, oh, there's a Halford over here, and yeah, they know what's over there, so they can start making their actions from that.
Halford is more of a tier 8 ship than a proper tier 9. She sacrificed everything for her plane gimmick, and it's not that good.
No,
Basically, even if you're a fan of hybrid ships, just avoid the Halford. She's not good
yeah,
at all.
she isn't worth it at all. Now, moving on from the terrible Halford to the Groningen. a lot of the old time players will know that this is originally the Friesland, and they moved it over to the Dutch line. Then they renamed it the Groningen. The Groningen to me has been one of the better or best credit grinding ships in the game with its tier 9 matchmaking where it can see tier 7s and it can also see supers as well. And the fact that this thing can just put out so much damage and it has the smoke and the hydro as well with the DFAA, it makes it a formidable opponent in the right hands. You can also play it more as a farmer or more as like a slash DD hunter if you're wanting to, but most of the time you're playing more as a farmer. But overall, I think the Grunin's a really good tier 9 credit farmer nowadays, so it's going to be one of my top coal ship choices.
So tier 9 so keep in mind tier 9 ships are best for making credits. The tier 10s we discussed previously, they're more for competitive or for free XP slash commander EXP farming. And in this regard, Groningen is one of the better tier 9 ships, so she will farm she'll she's a very good credit farmer just because of that good performance. She plays somewhat similarly as a tier 9 Sherman. Very good guns, but you'll notice the arcs difference because you have to get pretty close to use them effectively. Also be careful, she's one of the few destroyers with no torpedoes whatsoever. So if enemies rush you, you're not going to have a good time.
Yep.
But if you can overcome the ballistics issue and place your smokes properly, she is a very strong destroyer.
hmm So Groningen is definitely a top coal ship choice there. Now, what about the Agir? I've tried playing the Agir a lot of in randoms recently, and it's been like a real pain. I'm not sure if I'm just playing it wrong or if it's the ship, but I've been having a hard time playing it recently in randoms.
Gear is a more of a defensive ship. She's meant to get in close, use her guns against broadside ships, kind of like the tier 9 version of Scharnhorst. But she's a little bit harder to play because, well, there's a lot of threats running around, and if she commits too early, a tier 10 or a tier 11 ship can just instantly nuke her. But that being said, she's still fairly forgiving for a cruiser. So if you're newer to the game, you have a lot of coal, and you want to get something that's easy to play, then a gear would be a better choice.
hmm So let's move on to the Azuma. Pretty much the little sister ship of the Yoshino.
hmm Azuma is a long-range kiting ship. She has the same playstyle as the other Japanese cruisers, except she does not use torpedoes. Her guns are very good, and she has a fast reloading keel. But overall, she suffers from the same problem as Yoshino. You basically you do kiting, and that's all you do. That being said, she's pretty easy to play as long as you don't show broadside and get instantly destroyed. So another like somewhat friendly beginner ship if you want something easy to play at tier 9.
hmm So let's move on from the Azuma. What about the Iwami?
Iwami. Ooh, Iwami is not a yeah, it's not a ship I would recommend because she has 8406 guns or 410 guns and improved secondaries. But her secondary range is inferior to the German battleships. So she also has torpedoes, but those require you to kind of show a little bit of side, and that's not very comfortable given her armor loadout. So so it feels like she is trying to do too many things at once and ends up not being good at anything.
Yeah, that is quite unfortunate. Now we're going from the Iwami to the Kearsarge. And to me, the top coal ship is the Kearsarge. Mostly just off of the guns. The Kearsarge guns are insane. Even though it's ugly, those guns just slap. It just slaps. They hurt. And
So Kearsarge guns are actually about the same as North Carolina guns. Uh, they have the same ballistics and I believe the same hitting power, if I remember correctly.
yeah,
There's
about the
one
same.
catch. There's one catch though. Uh, Kearsarge is at tier 9. You get 33% more firepower, but you have much longer reload, and you're up one tier. So the ships you're shooting at on average will be faster. Now, can you tell me about Kearsarge's other gimmick?
Kearsarge's other gimmick is the hybrid attack fighters. A lot of good players. Now, these fighters alone can do a lot of damage, but what makes them great is that you can use them also as a spotting tool to where when you're attacking a target, you can when you start the attack run and then you instantly switch back to your ship. And a lot of good players will use this strategy to either perma spot a DD when they can shoot it, or they'll make a ship turn toward the planes and then they'll use their guns to dev strike a broadside target, which is a very strong tool that a lot of Kearsarge players do not know how to do properly.
hmm And Kearsarge is actually not like she has a giant tumor on her for her flight deck, and her HP pool isn't the. Let me see. I think her HP pool isn't bad, but her defenses in general is not very good. She has a giant flight deck, and that tends to eat more shells than you want. And she doesn't have the greatest concealment, so you have to be careful where you position the Kearsarge. I think overall Kearsarge is a very good, an excellent ship, but she's also very demanding to play properly. If you don't have that much experience with hybrid ships, I would recommend some of the other ships that are easier to play.
Yep.
But if you're confident in your abilities, you've played a good amount of battleships, you're used to the North Carolina guns, and you have experience with playing hybrid ships, then yeah, Kearsarge will be an excellent choice for you.
All right. So for the Tesla or the Tulsa, what do you think of the Tulsa? I think it's like too like nowadays in this meta, I think the Tulsa doesn't really do super well in brawls. I've seen it do well with the fact that it can just reverse, and as the cruisers try to rush it, like if you're fighting tier 9 cruisers, you can just simply reverse and just keep shooting with your guns, and it does have the improved AP of the Des Moines. So you are able to melt cruisers or BBs, but the thing is, it has less guns and a slightly longer reload than compared to a Des Moines.
So Tulsa's biggest advantage over the other cruisers is her concealment. Goes down to about I think it was either 9.3 or 9.5. Let
It's
me
not.
double
I
check
think
here.
it's 9 point. I think it's 9.3 because its radar should be 9 kilometers.
But yeah, it doesn't carry as much firepower as the other US cruisers, but it's still pretty dang good. And with her concealment, she get into very strong positions and oh, it's 9.5. Concealment's 9.5, which
Okay.
is actually quite good. She does get 9-kilometer radar, but with that 9.5 concealment, she can get into very strong positions more easily, and then just DPM ships down with her insane forward firepower and many Des Moines guns. Overall, her playstyle is actually closer to Baltimore than the Buffalo or the Des Moines,
Yep.
but she's a solid ship if you are more of the if you want like a high DPM ship at close range, but don't like the maneuverability or the clumsiness of Buffalo and Des Moines. Des Moines without Lech mod, to clarify, strictly speaking.
Yep. So moving on, let's talk about the Carnot. Yeah, the Carnot can only be played as like pretty much like an Azuma. It has to be played at distance due to how squishy this armor is. and how the guns have such a very long reload. The guns do a lot of damage, but there's such a long reload that this ship, in any kind of close range encounters, it doesn't have torps, and it's only able to use its guns. And in the secondaries, it says long range secondaries here, but they're not improved secondaries. There's no reason for you to build into secondaries, and it's also French armor. Excuse me.
Uh, so one thing to note with Carno, you do not have main battle reload booster.
No.
It's a French ship without main battle reload booster. That is very unfortunate because she could have used it.
If it had a reload booster, this ship would be way higher on the list, but it's
Mhm.
not.
Like it's relatively fast for a large cruiser, but it feels like she tries to be a large cruiser, but doesn't really have the firepower to make efficient use out of it. And it's almost like just take an actual battleship at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It also has heavy cruiser extinguisher time, which you just burn religiously amount.
Hmm.
Now, moving on to the Marco Polo. The Marco Polo has SAP and AP shells. It's also a pretty tanky ship with a pretty thick turtle back, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to citadel this ship, but it doesn't have the highest amount of HP pool, unfortunately. So you do have to be wary of that. But overall, I do think it's a decent tier 9 battleship, but when there's Kearsarge, it's kind of like, I don't know.
Uh, Kearsarge's is its own category. Marco Polo is very good at smashing cruisers thanks to her 16-inch SAP shells. Like she's more of a traditional battleship, but with SAP and kind of small HP pool for her tier. But that doesn't matter much when the cruiser loses 20k from every single angle because screw you, I'm Italian.
Yeah, they hit that Italian sap button and gets to go ham.
Hmm.
Now, moving on
If
to sorry, keep going. My bad.
if you're unsure of a battleship and you want to play a respect at least a average or above average battleship, just take the Marco Polo.
Exactly. Now, moving on, let's talk about the Z44. The Z44, I don't know what they were thinking with this ship. It's like more of like a mixture of, like, I don't know. It's like a jack of all trade ship for the Germans, but it doesn't have the hydro of the Germans, and its guns are pretty mediocre, and the
It, you
torpedoes
can
aren't the best either.
you can think of the you can think of Z44 as the Japanese torpedo destroyer that somehow got the German label.
Yep.
Her torpedoes are quite solid, I think, but the problem is her concealment also got buffed as well. I think it's 5.9 now. But the problem with her is just that she's still a torpedo boat, and her concealment is not really like it's better, but it's not that competitive for a torpedo boat. Compare her to Yagumo, that can do spotting quite well and has very good guns against other destroyers. Z44, you don't want to fight other destroyers in that thing. You wish you had Hydro so you can at least spot for your teammates. So she's more of like a torpedo boat, but without the other accessories if you can't do the torpedo boat properly.
Yep.
Not a ship I would recommend.
Yeah, I do not recommend the Z44 either. Moving on, let's talk about the POMMERN.
Ooh. POMMERN is your stereotypical brawling German battleship that Wargaming gave her torpedoes for good measure. Her guns also are stereotypically German. They have 1.5 Sigma and they will not hit anything. Literally.
Yeah, unfortunately, you don't. It's very hard to hit anything in a POMMERN.
But that's perfectly fine. You've got 12, 15-inch guns. You can run up to people and torp them while they can't citadel you because of German thick armor. Yeah, she can be fun in brawls and in ranked. If you try to play her in randoms, she's gonna burn down just as soon as you spawn. And she also has the unfortunate reputation of being a noob ship. Not that she's a bad ship, but you need to actually play carefully if you want to get success out of her in randoms. But if you don't want to think that much, just go take her into brawls or ranked and have fun.
All right, so we're almost done with this list of the top coal ships in World of Warships. Let's talk about the Flint. Honestly, I think the Flint's overpriced. As one of the top, like for this list being a top coal ship, I don't think the Flint is worth the 168k coal. It's not.
Hmm.
It's not like it should definitely not be a first, but down the line on coal ships, yes, but definitely not one of your first. The 168 price tag is way too much. At this point, it's way too much. It's absurdly overpriced. It should be around the same price as maybe the Duke of York or the Lazo, but 168k, nah, it's way too much.
Let's more for she's more for operations. She's still overpriced, but she's arguably one of the better operation ship if you're not willing to spend money.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you don't like mid-tier gameplay and or you actually want to spend coal efficiently, pretend Flint doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd just say it's best not to. And the reason why the Flint is this price is due to steel. It was originally a steel ship that was turned to a coal ship. That is why the Flint is so expensive, as well as the Black and NEUSTRASHIMY, which were both steel ships as well that were overturned due to that. They were turned over to coal ships, and that's why it was so much coal wise. Now the Duke of York, um, it's a ship that a lot of people don't really talk about. It does have improved AP, reduced chances of ricocheting. It does also have hydroacoustics, which is very rare for the British battleships. So a lot of the time, people don't realize this thing has hydro, and they just get rushed by it when they're in their smoke, which is pretty hilarious. It's happened to me a lot when I was starting to play the games. Like, oh, it's a British ship; it doesn't have hydro, and it just W's at you. It's like, oh wait, I'm
Hmm.
being hydroed.
So Duke of York is it's kind of an odd ship in the British line. Most people actually dismiss her because King George V is better, and from a pure HE spamming point, yeah, King KGV is better. But Duke of York, if you can utilize her improved AP shells against cruisers, they will do work. And as Bo said, Hydro is a very good defensive tool, and for YOLO rushing unsuspecting destroyers.
It
Is
also
it a ship I would
has it also
go
has
on?
an enhanced repair party as well, and a fast consumable cooldown. So you are able. They did give it a. I think they gave it a buff the same time they did the Monarch, but don't quote me on that. I know that the Monarch got
I
buffed.
don't think so. I'll double check and compare it to KGB.
Okay.
So as far as consumables is concerned, exact same repair party.
Okay. All right. Cool. Cool. All right. So let's
Yeah.
just speed run the rest of these. What about
Not a ship I would recommend, by the way.
Yeah.
Duke of Yuck, just go get something else.
Yeah. Duke of Yuck. Unfortunately. Now, what about the Lazo? Yay or nay?
Uh, nah.
What about
It's stereotypical Russian light cruiser with a spotter plane gimmick. Eh, just not impressive for a tier 7.
Yep.
Next.
October Revolution. I love this ship because it's pretty much a tier 5 Ismail, and the Ismail is already extremely strong for the Russian battleships. So I think the October Revolution is amazing because of the fact
Hmm.
it's tier 5. It's a tier 5 Ismail, and it has so many guns. It's a actual tank. Extremely, it's busted for tier 5. It's amazing.
If you like playing low to mid tiers, October Revolution's amazing. She's only a hidden pick just solely because Agincourt overshadows everything.
Yes, exactly. Because I mean, the thing is, like, you can only get Agincourt from special events or from Santa containers.
I thought, can you buy her right now?
Uh-uh. I don't
Let me
think
go double
so.
check just to make sure.
I'll double check. I don't think you can. Oh, yeah, you can. Never mind. You can. My bad. You can. I thought they removed
Yeah.
it.
If you want a strong ship, get October Revolution.
All right.
So move on.
Yep. So next one is going to be the Rio de Janeiro. I'm not really the big fan of this ship. I'm not really the biggest fan of
Basically,
it.
gun version of the Agincourt. She's a decent ship. If you like tier 5 ships, but if you like tier 5 ships, she's fine. But I would honestly recommend Agincourt or the October Revolution instead.
Mm-hmm. What about the Agil? The Agil is the
Eagle.
only. Oh, Agil is the only French DD to have smoke. It's the only one. Oh, Rio also has no anti-air. So, yeah, fun stuff.
Just go Cryon Port whenever Ryujo hovers its aircraft above you.
Yeah.
Eagle is pretend that the French part does not exist because she's effectively a generic destroyer with French nation for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Average ship. I would say if you like mid tier destroyer, she's okay, but there's no real reason to get her.
All right. What about the Gallant?
Gallant. If you want a generic tier 6 destroyer, go ahead. If you want something interesting, do get something else.
What about the Kirov?
Kirov, if you love to explode at tier 5, Kirov is pretty good.
All right, low. All right, so that's a no then. What about the Anshin?
Anshin, she has a unique gimmick she has a unique gimmick where she gets improved free EXP gain for some weird reason. I think she still does at least. But anyways, she's a solid tier 6 destroyer. Pretty good torpedoes, very good guns. Just keep in mind they don't turn. The guns themselves do not turn. So you have to pre-set up your turret angles before you engage. Otherwise, if you can overcome that, she's a solid tier 6 ship. Always has been, and always will be.
All right, what about the Hill?
If you like funny tier 5 gameplay and throwing torps every like 30 seconds from each side, then Hill is fine.
All right, Marblehead, just instantly dev struck, so dev strikeable
If
machine.
Yep, she will get death struck every other game. But if you don't get death struck, she has amazing firepower and will actually farm teams down.
I've done
So
100k before in this ship. It can farm. You just have to be dev struck. You just can't get dev struck.
you just need to survive long enough to farm.
Yep. What about the Yubari?
Yubari, if you love the useless gimmick of having DFAA, then sure.
Yep. And the final two, the Campbellton and the Charleston.
Charleston is literally St. Louis with like 1 or 2 different stats. If you love seal clubbing, take Charleston. Campbelltown. You're buying a freaking tier 3 destroyer. No one really cares.
Well, there you go. All right, well, that's your review of the top coal ships in World of Warships. If you guys have any questions or concerns, definitely let me know in the comments down below. This is Overlord Bell, and thank you, SAT, for helping out today. Do greatly appreciate it. And I'll talk to y'all later.